Welcome to today's daily devotion as we study Core 47 on humility. We're going to be examining the story taking place in Genesis 37, which is surrounding Joseph and his train wreck of a family. Now, as you look at the life of Joseph, and this is in his early years where his brothers are going to set up a plot and sell him off to Egypt, but really the relationship dynamics surrounding this are interesting and worth noting and understanding as we dive into how does humility play out in this story. You see, you want to talk about generational sin. There is not really a better depiction of that than leading up to Joseph through his father, grandfather, and so on. See, Abraham had practiced extreme favoritism to Isaac to the point where he had sent Ishmael away. Isaac shows favoritism to Esau, but Jacob, by the help of his mother, gets in and kind of steals the show. So he grew up in a household suffering from favoritism. Jacob would then show favoritism to Rachel over Leah, and when sons of Rachel would be born, he would demonstrate that favoritism to them, who was Joseph and Benjamin. And so we see that this sin of unfair treatment or unwarranted treatment, especially within a family unit, is being passed on and on and on. And this would create extreme sibling jealousy from Joseph's brothers towards him. Joseph's father basically really doted on him. He took good care of him. It seems like he might have given him the easier jobs, and even in material possessions, gifted him with the famous Technicolor coat. So out of this arises just Joseph and the dreams that God had given him. And he shares his dreams with his brothers, which are, suffice to say, all just depictions of his brothers bowing down to him. Why would he do that? Well, it could be argued that there was a little bit of pride behind Joseph and his desire to share that story, but I would argue that at this point Joseph is probably only about 17, and I can't think of a 17-year-old guy that wouldn't take the opportunity to gloat over his brothers about a dream that he had. However, this seed of favoritism that had been sown had created really hearts of bitterness and resentment in his brothers to the point where they could not stand him. And what this would end up producing is a plot to destroy Joseph. Now, Joseph had gone to help out his brothers and check on them in a kind of a distant pasture where they were taking care of the flocks. And as he was arriving, the brothers set about plotting to kill him. Now, he would be thrown in a cistern, so they decided not to kill him. They threw him in a cistern, and some merchants would come by and they sold him into slavery, and that's what took Joseph down to Egypt. Now, there's really only two glimmers of decent character, we'll say, demonstrated in this really tragic story. One was from Reuben, the oldest brother, and he had convinced the brothers not to kill him, but instead to throw him in a cistern, because later he was going to go and grab and rescue him. So maybe because he was the oldest and felt a little bit more responsibility, or just knew that murder was out of the question, he attempted to rescue. And then Judah, who spares his life by selling him into slavery. Judah was the one that convinced the brothers then to sell him. And we don't really know the heart behind it. It might have been to spare his life, but it also may have been from poor intentions also. We're not really sure. What we see, though, is the exact opposite of humility demonstrated here. Instead, it's just the worst examples of pride and self-interest and the fallout that would come from it. They would have to live with the guilt and the weight of what they did to their brother. They would force their father to live in grief for 20 years. And they would live with their father, continuing this facade, this charade, this lie that their brother was dead. And I can't imagine how they could have faced him every day living this lie. It makes me wonder, what would it look like if there had been humility introduced into this story? Let's establish a quick definition of what humility is. So I like Philippians 2 verse 3, which states, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." And I've heard biblical humility defined this way, which I really appreciate. It's not thinking too highly of yourself and not thinking too lowly of yourself, but really having an honest understanding of where you stand in relation to God and in relation to people, and approaching life from the perspective of how do I serve. So it makes me wonder how this story really could have been different if Abraham had just really focused on the interests of both sons. If Isaac had been generous and caring to both Esau and Jacob. If Jacob then in turn might have treated all of his sons well. How could that have changed this story? And it makes me think in our own lives, how are we treating the people that are around us? Pride is really deceptive and insidious. It'll twist how you see things, and it may cause you to treat others poorly or differently because you're looking out for your own self-interest and not theirs. So are you actively looking in and looking out for the interests of others? Are you putting yourself last and becoming the servant of all, as Jesus would challenge us to be? Overall, the story of Joseph is tragic to start, but it ends in redemption. And God always works good when we surrender a situation to him. But let's always be focused on caring for others first, on thinking less of ourselves and more of how can I honor God in this situation. I hope you have a great week.